Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at how we can convert between different units. And we're not just going to be speaking about units that you might be already familiar with, whether that be meters, grams, liters, and so on. We're going to be looking at all kinds of units within the SI. So the International System of Units, abbreviated as SI, and if you're wondering why it's SI and not ISU or something, it's because SI comes from the French abbreviation, which I'm not going to say in this video. I don't know how to speak French. But it has base units with prefixes used to denote different amounts. And if you look at this table here, you'll see a bunch of common prefixes that you would have seen in the past. So starting with our base unit, say we were talking about a meter, okay? Then we can add these prefixes to it, and the prefix tells us how many of those base units we have. So for instance, kilo, that means we have 1,000 meters, or we can say 10 to the power of 3. They always have this base 10. This base 10 value, which we'll get to in a second. Or we could talk about a centimeter, which is 0.01 meters, or 10 to the power of -2. And you might know how to convert between meters and centimeters, multiplying or dividing by 100. But using this table, we can apply it for all kinds of different units and all different prefixes. For instance, you see nano here. Nano is 0.000000001 meters, a nanometer, or 10 to the power of -9. So 1 billionth of a meter. So we use these prefixes and their base 10 value, and we can convert between the units of any kind, such as meters, grams, and liters, as we talked about, some basic ones you've seen. But as you move into electro, you'll be seeing other units such as watts, hertz, volts, amperes, a bunch of different units here. So the way that we use these tables and we kind of refer to these prefixes is, say I wanted to convert from centi to kilo. All right, so those are the two prefixes I have. So starting from here, and we'd be going upwards. If we're going upwards, we're going to divide by the conversion value, which we'll look at in a second. However, if we're going down, maybe we're going the other way around. We're going from a kilometer to a centimeter. We would want to multiply by the order of magnitude difference. So just take that into note. As we're going up the table, we divide. As we're going down the table, we multiply. Another way to think about it is, if you're going from a smaller unit to a bigger unit, you want to divide. If you're going from a bigger unit to a smaller unit, you want to multiply. As counterintuitive as that might sound, because you're thinking, well, if I'm dividing, like if I'm going from a smaller to a bigger unit, I'd want to multiply, but you want to divide the number to counter the getting a bigger unit. So let's do a couple of examples. Start off with this. I want to convert 2.7 kilowatts. That's what the W means, watts. So I want to convert 2.7 kilowatts to watts. Now, some of you guys might know that kilo just means 1,000. And so what we could do is just multiply this by 1,000. And that would work. You would get the correct answer. But let's refer to this table though. So we're looking at kilowatts. Okay, and I want to get to just watts. There's no prefix in front of watts. So we just want to move it to the base unit. So going from here to here, I'm going down. So going back to our previous thing, we want to multiply because we're going down. And we started at 10 to the power of 3 was the order of magnitude. And we're going down to 10 to the power of 0. So essentially what you're doing is you're moving 3 across, like 3 down, going from 3 to 0. So I want to, because I'm going down, I'm going to be multiplying. So I'm going to multiply by 10 to the power of 3, because that's the difference between 3 and 0. So the way that I'm going to find this now is I'm just simply going to do 2.7 times 10 to the power of 3. And if you've done the video on scientific notation, you'll see, oh, this looks like scientific notation. But 2.7 times 10 to the power of 3, and this gives me 2,700 watts. Yeah, and that would have, like I said, you might know kilo just means 1,000, so 2.7 times 1,000 is 2,700. Going to the next question, say I want to convert to nm, n representing nano, as we see here on the bottom of the table, to centimeters. So I'm going from this row, nano, to this row, centi. And I'm going upwards this time. And because we're going upwards, you remember that means we're going to divide. So we're going to divide. And then we also now need to look at the difference between these order of magnitudes. So nano is -9, centi is -2. So the difference is 7. So I'm going to be dividing by 10 to the power of 7. So 2 nanometers, I'm going to do 2 divided by 10 to the power of 7. If I do 2 divided by 10 to the power of 7, that gives me 0.0000002 centimeters. So very, very, very small, which makes sense. If you've ever heard of nanometers, we're talking about extremely, extremely small things. We measure like that to be the length of a cell or something. So it's going to be an extremely, extremely small measurement. But the way that we convert that is just by looking at the prefixes. We don't even need to know anything about nanometers and centimeters. We just look at the difference between their order of magnitude or their base. So one was at -2, one was at -9. So there's a difference of 7. And because I went up the table, I divided. Looking at this one, I want to convert to kilograms to milligrams. Take note just really quickly that this is a lowercase m, all right? That lowercase m means that we're talking about milligrams. If it was an uppercase m, I'll be talking about megagrams. But again, so we're starting at 2 kilograms. So we're starting here. I want to end up with milligrams, which is down here. Again, we see that I'm going down the table. So because I'm going down the table, I'm going to be multiplying. And now I need to see the difference in their base values. So we see kilo is +3, and we see that milli is -3. So the difference between 3 and -3, don't say it's 0. It's going to be 6 because 3 to 0 is 3 and 0 to -3 is another 3. So there's 6 difference between them. So I'm going to do 10 to the power of 6. So it's going to be 2 times 10 to the power of 6. So 2 times 10 to the power of 6, which gives me 2 million milligrams. And some of you guys might have already known how to do that anyway. You could say 2 kilograms is 2,000 grams, and 2,000 grams, you could times that by 1,000 to get into milligrams as well. But using our prefixes, we can just do it in one movement. Lastly, this is something slightly different, and it's important that we look at it. Here we're looking at converting between some squared units, some measurements of area, rather than some measurements of just a one-dimensional length. It mostly works the same. However, there's one thing you also need to consider, and we'll look at that now. So starting off, we want to convert from meters squared to centimeters squared. So looking at our table, first of all, we're starting at the base unit, and we're going to centi, and you guys should all know anyway that that's going to be 100. But because we're going down, we're going to be multiplying by 10 to the power of 2, because we're going from 0 to -2, multiplying because we're going down the table. But one thing we also need to consider, though, is these are square units. And because they are square units, we also need to square the conversion. So we're going to do 10 to the power of 2 and then square that. So just a little niche thing that you need to remember, but if we're talking about square units, like units of area, we need to square that conversion as well. Same if we're doing cube units, by the way. Say I was converting from 4 meters cubed to centimeters cubed. I'll do 10 to the power of 2, that same conversion, except I'll do that to the power of 3. I would have to cube that conversion. Anyway, going from here, I'll do 4 times 10 squared, and that'll be 4 times brackets 10 squared. I'm just doing this in my calculator. 10 squared, and then that's to the power of 2, which is 40,000 centimeters squared. By the way, some of you guys might remember your index laws and might know that 10 to the power of 2 squared is the same as